Welcome to Life Stories. Today, we have a powerful and emotional journey to share with you, a story about betrayal, resilience, and the strength to rebuild after everything seems lost. Meet Megan, a woman whose life was turned upside down when her husband, Tom, left her with more than just a broken heart. With mounting debt and a shattered sense of trust, Megan must find the courage to protect her daughter and fight for a new future. Tune in to hear how she navigates this devastating situation and discovers the unshakable power of community. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to start today's story. It was a Thursday afternoon when everything started to unravel. I walked into the bank, not knowing that my entire world was about to come crashing down. I was exhausted, between working part-time, raising Emma, and keeping the house running. I had no energy left to even consider the possibility that something sinister was happening just beneath the surface of our lives. But there I was, sitting across from a bank representative who had just told me something that would haunt me for the rest of my life. "All these cards are maxed out, Megan," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "And they're all in your name." Her words hit me like a slap to the face. I felt my stomach drop. I couldn't comprehend what I was hearing. "There must be some mistake," I insisted, my voice trembling as I flipped through the stack of bank statements she had pushed toward me. "I only have one credit card, and I rarely use it." The statements she slid across the desk were filled with alarming red numbers, each one more terrifying than the last. There were 5 credit cards listed, all maxed out, and what made it worse, far worse, was that they were in my name. My husband, Tom, had opened these accounts without my knowledge, and without my consent. The representative pointed to a series of signatures on the applications, signatures that looked vaguely like mine. But the more I stared at them, the more I realized that they weren't my handwriting. The realization hit me hard, like ice-cold water being poured over my head. My hands began to shake. "I never signed these," I whispered. "I never saw these cards." Her expression shifted from sympathetic to concerned. "Megan, the total outstanding balance across these 5 accounts is $5,280.63, and they are all 3 months past due." I sat there in stunned silence, my mind racing to make sense of it all. Just 4 days ago, my husband of 13 years had packed a suitcase, kissed Emma goodbye while I was at the grocery store, and left a note on our kitchen counter. "Found someone who appreciates me. Don't try to contact me. We'll talk about divorce proceedings later." And now, in a matter of moments, I was being told that not only had he abandoned me and our daughter, but he had also deliberately set me up for financial ruin. He had left me holding the bag, with debts I hadn't even agreed to. I couldn't breathe, my heart raced, and I felt a wave of panic. How had I missed this? How had I let it all go unnoticed? We had been married for years. Tom had always handled the finances, and I trusted him, blindly, stupidly, believing that we were in this together, that he had my back. But now, it felt like everything had been a lie. As the bank representative explained my limited options, debt consolidation, payment plans, possible bankruptcy, my mind drifted back to the beginning, to when Tom and I had first met. We had met in college, both ambitious and full of dreams. Tom was intelligent, charming, and driven. He made me feel safe. I had grown up in a chaotic environment, raised by a single mother who struggled with addiction, and all I had ever wanted was stability. When I met Tom, I thought he could provide that. He promised me a future, a stable life. We married young, and within a year, we had Emma. But somewhere along the way, things began to change. At first, it was subtle. He wanted me to stay home more, to focus on raising Emma and keeping the house. He even managed our finances completely. I had a small allowance for household expenses, but Tom controlled every penny that came into our home. He discouraged me from returning to school, saying that Emma needed me at home. His protective nature slowly morphed into something more controlling. He questioned my friendships, told me who I should and shouldn't talk to, and when I mentioned going back to school, he'd remind me how important my role as a mother was. "You don't want our daughter raised by strangers, Do you? He'd ask, making me feel guilty for even thinking about daycare or childcare options. And so, I stayed at home. I adapted to his desires. I stopped pursuing my own career, my own dreams, because I believed in the life he promised. I convinced myself that I was doing the right thing, that our family's future was secure. But looking back, I see how wrong I was. I had traded my independence for a cage. The warning signs were always there. The late nights at work. The password-protected second phone he claimed was for client emergencies. The way he quickly minimized his computer screen whenever I entered his home office. The emotional distance between us. Despite his continued control over nearly every aspect of our lives. 2 years ago, I had found a receipt for an expensive dinner at a Portland restaurant. On a night Tom had claimed to be working late. When I confronted him, he turned it around on me. I was planning a surprise anniversary dinner. He said, looking wounded, "Why can't you trust me, Megan?" I ended up apologizing for doubting him. The anniversary dinner never happened. Instead, I received a bracelet in the mail. A gift ordered online and delivered to our door in a plain brown box. But I convinced myself it was my fault. That my suspicions had ruined his plans. I worked harder to be the wife he wanted. The mother he wanted. I silenced the small voice in my head that whispered something was wrong. And now, here I was, sitting in a bank, looking at a stack of credit card statements that didn't even belong to me. My world was collapsing, and I had no idea how to fix it. I didn't call the number from the text right away. Instead, I picked Emma up from school, forcing a smile as she chattered about her day. How do you tell your 11-year-old that her father had left? That he had abandoned you both? And that the house they'd grown up in might be taken away because of the debts he had left behind? How do you protect her from the truth? That night, I sat at the kitchen table with a notepad, trying to make sense of the numbers. My part-time job brought in around $1.800 a month. And our mortgage was $1.400. After utilities, groceries, and Emma's activities, I didn't even know how to begin. The numbers didn't add up. No matter how many times I reworked them, there was no way out. And then, just as I was about to give up, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah. I stared at the message for a moment before opening it. "Megan, this is Sarah. Tom told me you were controlling and financially abusive. But now I'm seeing things differently. Call me if you want to know what he's been hiding. Sarah." The name felt like a slap. But a cold, calculating one. Sarah. That was the name Tom had whispered in his sleep twice last month. And each time I convinced myself it was nothing. I had pretended not to hear it. Told myself it was just a fluke. But now, the pieces were falling into place. And the knot in my stomach tightened as I read the text again. I had been living a lie. And the truth was more painful than anything I could have imagined. Tom had been hiding something from me all along. And now Sarah was offering to reveal it. Part of me wanted to ignore it. To believe that this was just another trick, another attempt to manipulate me. But I had already been betrayed by Tom once. The idea of ignoring this opportunity to learn the truth felt foolish. I called the number. "Hello?" Her voice was younger than I expected. A slight southern accent softening her words. "This is Megan Carter," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "You texted me about Tom." For the next 30 minutes, I learned things that shattered the image of my marriage. Sarah explained that she was 26. A graphic designer from Nashville. She met Tom 9 months ago in an online forum for gaming enthusiasts. And their relationship had developed quickly. Tom had portrayed himself as an unhappily married man, trapped in a controlling marriage with a financially irresponsible wife. He had painted me as the villain. Someone who refused to work, who drained his resources, and who was preventing him from achieving his goals. "Tom told me you had gambling debts," Sarah said, her voice shaking with regret. "He said you'd maxed out credit cards. And he had to work extra jobs to cover it. He also said you monitored his calls and emails. So we had to be careful about communicating." I could hardly breathe as I processed her words. It wasn't just the credit cards or the lies about money. It was everything. He had painted me as someone I wasn't. And in doing so, he had manipulated her, too. I had never gambled a penny. I had never seen a credit card statement that was maxed out until today. And I had certainly never monitored Tom's calls or emails, if anything. He had been the one who was secretive. Not me. I never signed those credit card applications. I whispered, my hands trembling as I thought about everything I had discovered. I didn't even know about the credit cards. I'm so sorry, Megan, Sarah said, her voice softening. I believed him completely until yesterday, when I started seeing inconsistencies in his stories. Then I found his laptop open and saw emails about transferring money from joint accounts. And that's when I started putting the pieces together. When I confronted him, he got defensive and admitted he'd been lying about you. I sat in stunned silence, listening to Sarah's words, my mind spinning. Tom had been lying to both of us. He had manipulated our lives. And now, through the damage he had caused, he was walking away with a fresh start while I was left to pick up the pieces. As our conversation ended, I felt a sense of disgust that nearly overwhelmed me. It wasn't just about the money, though that was a huge part of it. It was the emotional manipulation. The years of betrayal. Tom had used me, and worse, he had used Sarah, too. When I hung up, I felt a strange mix of emotions, anger, disbelief, sadness. But there was something else too. A quiet resolve. I was done being a victim. I was done letting Tom control my life. I had to find a way out of this mess. Not just for me, but for Emma. But there was still one thing I hadn't told Sarah. I had no idea how to fix this. How could I possibly fight back when I didn't even have enough money for a lawyer? How could I protect Emma when I didn't have a stable income? No support system. And all the cards, both literally and figuratively, were stacked against me? And yet, as I drove home that afternoon, the thought kept swirling in my mind. I wasn't alone. Not anymore. Tom had isolated me for years. But now I knew there were people who cared. People who were willing to help. The moment I pulled into the driveway, Emma was there waiting for me, looking up with her big brown eyes. How did it go, Mom? She asked innocently, unaware of the storm that was brewing just beneath the surface. I forced a smile, but inside, everything felt heavy. I couldn't tell her the truth, not yet. How do you tell an 11-year-old that her father had abandoned her? And that her world was about to change in ways she couldn't yet understand? But even as I struggled to find the right words, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, with the right support, we could make it through this together. The next few days were a blur of emotions and decisions. I had so many questions, and no answers seemed to come easily. Tom had left me not just with a pile of debt, but with a feeling of helplessness that threatened to drown me. But somewhere deep inside, I found a flicker of determination. I couldn't let him win. I had to rebuild, not just for myself, but for Emma, too. As I sat at my kitchen table, looking at the bank statements, the credit card bills, and the notes from Sarah, the gravity of the situation was clear. But I wasn't alone. Something deep inside me told me that I had more strength than I realized. And I wasn't going to let Tom's betrayal destroy me. That night, I picked up the phone and called Diane, my old college roommate. We hadn't spoken in nearly 2 years, ever since Tom had told me she'd made inappropriate comments about our marriage. I had pushed her away, thinking it would keep the peace. But now, with everything falling apart, I needed help. When Diane answered, her voice was full of surprise. Megan, is everything okay? No, I said, choking on the words. And then, as if I couldn't stop it, I told her everything. About Tom's betrayal, the credit card debt, the divorce, the message from Sarah. I poured out my heart, not holding anything back. I'm coming over tonight, Diane said without hesitation, and I'm bringing help. I wasn't sure what she meant by that. But I didn't care. I needed support. And Diane was the one person who had always stood by me, before I had let Tom isolate me from my own friends. Later that evening, Diane arrived at my house, accompanied by a woman I didn't recognize. She introduced herself as Catherine, a family law attorney. You don't need to worry about lawyer fees, Diane said, her voice firm. Catherine's doing this as a favor. For the next 2 hours, Catherine went over the details of my situation, explaining my options. She reviewed the bank statements, the credit card records, and the strange signatures on the applications, which were clearly not mine. Catherine suggested I file for an emergency hearing to freeze our remaining assets, so Tom couldn't liquidate everything before I could contest the debts. She also recommended seeking temporary child support for Emma while I got things sorted out. For the first time since Tom left, I felt a flicker of hope. I wasn't helpless. There were people in my corner. Diane and Catherine were my lifelines, and they were showing me a way out of this nightmare. The next morning, Diane took me to a meeting with Mr. Patel, our retired neighbor, who had been helping me rebuild my credit score over the past few months. He was a kind, old man who had always looked out for us, and now he was helping me navigate the financial mess Tom had left behind. Don't worry, Megan, he assured me as we sat at the dining table, sorting through paperwork. We'll get this sorted out. We'll build your credit back up, step by step. Tom might have tried to destroy you, but you're not alone anymore. His words meant the world to me. The realization that I had a community of people who cared about me, who were willing to help me through this, was overwhelming. For so long, Tom had worked to isolate me, to make me feel like I was on my own. But now, with the support of Diane, Catherine, Mr. Patel, and others, I was finally starting to see a way forward. Then, the next shock came. I opened the mail to find a certified letter from the mortgage company. Despite the home equity loan that Tom had taken out behind my back, the company was notifying me of missed payments. We were now 30 days delinquent on both the mortgage and the equity line. I felt my heart race as I called the mortgage company. The representative confirmed that Tom had changed the account contact information to his new address and phone number, leaving me in the dark. This was the last straw. Tom was trying to take everything from me, our house, our savings, and now, even the chance to rebuild. That evening, Diane called with the results from the bank's investigation into the equity loan. The footage doesn't show you at the signing, she said, her voice tinged with relief. That's good for the forgery claim. But there's a complication. The loan papers have a notary seal. We may have to subpoena the notary to find out what happened. I nodded, feeling a mix of emotions, relief that there was evidence to fight back, but fear of what it would take to uncover the truth. I didn't know how long this process would take, but I was determined to fight for Emma's future. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get worse, I received a text from Tom. You're making a big mistake. Megan, stay out of this, or I'll make sure you and Emma end up on the street by month's end. I felt the blood rush to my head. Tom was threatening me. He had crossed the line. But this time, he had made a fatal error. He had threatened Emma. That, I realized, was the moment everything changed. He had just made his biggest mistake, and I wasn't going to let him get away with it. 3 months after Tom left, things started to shift. It wasn't easy. There were days when I wondered if I would make it through the storm. But I found strength in unexpected places. The support I received from Diane, Catherine, Mr. Patel, and even Emma, who had grown more determined than ever, gave me the courage to keep moving forward. Together, we rebuilt what Tom had tried to tear apart. One evening, Tom called. His voice was tight with frustration. And for the first time, I saw him unraveling. Megan, we need to talk, he said, his tone defensive. The bank's investigating the loan for fraud. My accounts are frozen. What did you do? I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of calm I hadn't known in years. I didn't do anything. Tom, you did this. His response was a mix of anger and desperation. But I wasn't listening anymore. For so long, I had been the one to apologize, the one to doubt myself. But not anymore. I had found my voice. And with it, a power I hadn't realized I possessed. Weeks later, as we prepared for the court hearings, I watched Emma with pride. Despite everything, she remained optimistic. She had become the heart of our recovery. She was the one who had taught me the true meaning of resilience. In the end, Tom's lies were exposed, and his attempts to manipulate and control me backfired. With the help of my community, I fought back, and I won. The road ahead wasn't easy. But I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't alone. If you've enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more life-changing stories. Thank you for watching.